Now joining us in studio to further unpack this story is Professor Sipho Siepe. Always a pleasure to be with you, sir. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
If we can just start with the support that we saw outside that courthouse. I mean, from the night vigil yesterday, we saw huge numbers coming out in support of him. And today?
Well, I think it's a human thing to do. People will always support their comrades. Families do not abandon their own children because the children have fallen foul with the law. So if, there's also a statement that says a friend in need is a friend indeed. So I think what you see here is an expression of comradeship. But the ANC has become a party that is mired in internal hatred, internal struggles. So you would have thought, as it did in the past, when the President Zuma appeared on another matter, you saw the support that he got from the ANC. It was not divided, it was united. You saw the COSATU being behind him, you saw SACP and all that, because it is a comradely thing to do, especially if you're going to start by saying that you subscribe to the notion of innocent until proven guilty. But now things have changed.
Now things have changed.
So we must accept that as part of real politics. So you see the divisions. But what you also see is that there are people who are saying we would subscribe to the constitutional prescription of innocent until proven guilty, especially on a case like this that has been ongoing for so many years. And where you saw the NPA itself being tainted. You've seen people who are no longer in the NPA being influenced. We have the spy tapes, we have the media that had been partisan on this matter. And in the same way that you saw also the same thing happen to the Guptas, where people were shocked at the judgment in High Court, in Bloemfontein, precisely because we have already made up our minds that it is no longer about the facts on the table. But you still have some people who are saying, one, we're going to support our comrade through thick and thin. We saw the ANC do that with somebody like Tony Ngeni. He was never abandoned, and he actually went to jail. You saw some comrades on Alan Busak. They never threw him into the dustbin of history. They embraced him and say, well, we err. But as part of the comrades is when one of us go through difficult times, we don't abandon them. So you see those type of comrades who are there. But then you also have the enemies of Jacob Zuma, who are also in the ANC, and some are also in alliance partners, who have taken a view that he should not get support. But as I say, it's the nature of politics, especially when somebody is out of power. Then you start seeing how much people hate you. But then Jacob Zuma can say, at least there are some people who remember my contribution to this country, my contribution to the ANC, and we're going to support you. But as I say, it's a human thing to support those who are closer to us.
I'd like to further unpack this one, but also joining us on the line is our legal expert, Professor Paul Ngobeni. A very warm welcome to you. So let me bring you in here. Much as President Zuma has said that he wants his day in court, many could argue that he's gone to extremes to make sure that in fact, this case doesn't go through. I mean, we allude to the fact that he put voluminous presentations before the court, and he's denying everything that he's done. What is your response to this?
Well, ma'am, I think the issue that should be looked at is Zuma has always said he was prepared and that he's ready to have his day in court. You're correct. But if you look at who has prevented him from having his day in court, it's as clear as daylight who prevented him from having his day in court. There are many procedural missteps by the NPA where the courts repeatedly found the NPA to be wanting. I mean, I can go on and recite a litany of court decisions in which the NPA was found to have acted in a dilatory fashion, was found to have acted with political motives, and was found to have acted in an incompetent manner, resulting in the violation of Mr. Jacob Zuma's rights. So it is not because of Zuma's own doing that the cases have not come to finality before the courts. It's precisely because the NPA has basically been incompetent. They have incompetently handled the cases, and it has become clear that it was infected with political manipulations. That is why the cases have not come before the courts as they were supposed to.
All right, gentlemen. Now, let's get to something interesting that unfolded outside the court. Not just this one time, but the last appearance in court as well, where we heard Mr. Zuma saying that people are pushing him. He came out today and saying that those accusing him of being corrupt are corrupt themselves, and saying that he will retaliate if they further provoke him. Now, these veiled threats, this is not something new. We also heard during his presidency that when he resigns, he's going to write a book where he's going to tell all. And is he now becoming a danger to his comrades?
No, he's not being a danger to his comrades, but those people who are watching and listening to him are also going to get to a situation where they are tired of these threats. So if he's got something on people, it is he's duty-bound to say it. And some people were saying, effectively, by saying that he's also violating the rule that says if one knows that there's corruption taking place, one must actually report it. But what he's saying, we do not even know, because if you make allegations about people, we should not be saying because accusations have been made about somebody, therefore they are true. So it may be that even he himself, in saying that, might actually think that those accusations may hold water in court. We don't know that. Yeah. So I think people have dared him to say it is important that you let us know. But I don't think you can start saying we're going to arrest him because he has not said, because we don't know what he was going to say. Somebody can just say nonsense and then be dismissed, that it is actually nonsense, it's not corruption. For instance, even the notion of corruption, how it's defined, it differs from people to people. I mean, I can give, in this country, there is a new way in which corruption can also be defined. If I have a friend who later might actually get into a top position, if that friend is in need and I help the person a number of years, that can also be considered as corruption. But elsewhere, it could be that you're actually helping a friend, not because you expect something in return. And so even this case of Jacob Zuma, it borders around that. And what is interesting is that he's also accused of corruption because they say he has received money. But the one person who also gave Zuma money was Nelson Mandela. But you don't hear people say that Mandela, who assisted Zuma in the past with money, was actually corrupt. So I think there's a need for us to approach these things carefully in terms of what we mean by corruption. People can actually, there are so many people who have been accused of corruption, and only for the court to throw it. But going back to what Paul was saying, it's very important that we must also remind ourselves that this case was thrown out 3 times. One by 2 judges, actually 3 judges in KwaZulu-Natal, Vuka and Msimang and Nicholson. And in all of them, they talked about the incompetence of the prosecution, but also talked about what was a very clear interference by some political players in a space where they should not be. So this is not, it's a case that in itself, elsewhere, where there is a notion of fair treatment, would have been thrown out, because there is a view that says if the state comes with the hands that are dirty, the court will throw the case out. But here we seem to have a new approach where it doesn't matter. As long as somebody is disliked, the violation of that person's rights would be acceptable.
Mr. Paul Ngobeni, let me ask you this now. We're seeing that the President Zuma, former President Jacob Zuma, is having to sort out his legal funding in this matter. Now, many have asked about what is the implication on is this going to have then on the case? What are his legal options here? Should the state come back and say, we're really not paying this?
Well, then that will result in, if I were him, I would appeal that kind of decision, because it will not only be discriminatory. Remember that just this week there was a decision in the High Court that the former apartheid policemen who murdered Ms. Melani were to have their legal costs paid for by the state, because at the time they were doing so in the service of the apartheid state. It has always been a rule here in South Africa that the state attorney represents individuals, as long as they are state employees, in both criminal and even civil matters. So Zuma's case should not be handled any differently. The mere fact that you have had some political busybodies, such as the EFF and the DA, running to the courts to say that, to file an application in which they are asking the court not to allow the state to pay for the cost incurred by Mr. Zuma in the criminal prosecution and in any civil litigation related or incidental thereto. That, to me, suggests, once again, that you are having political interference. The courts cannot continue to allow political parties to gerrymander a criminal prosecution. They should leave the NPA to operate within the rules that it normally operates within, such as the guidance that has been given to the NPA by the courts just this week in the Simelane matter. Most of us are offended by the fact that our tax money is going to be used to finance apartheid police killers. But the fact remains, the rule of law says you cannot presume them to be guilty now. They're entitled to presumption of innocence. And as long as there is a showing that they were acting in their official capacity at that time, then the courts have said that we as the public should pick up the tab. And the same goes for Mr. Zuma. The allegations are that while he was either an MEC in KZN, he abused this position to commit certain offenses. While he was in office, the rule is that if you are saying that, you are supposed to pay for his legal costs.
All right. And one last question, gentlemen, before we wrap up our discussion. Now, there was also mention of his demeanor these days. He's much more, what I would say, defiant, very forceful in trying to say that he is innocent, with some believing that there might just be a sleeve, there might be just a card up his sleeve that will make sure that this November trial doesn't see the light of day.
Well, any accused should, and if you have a good lawyer, try to make sure that the case does not go to court. And there are two reasons. One is that once it goes into court, it's no longer in your hands. So you may do that because you may be saying you are innocent. But being innocent does not mean the court will not find you guilty. Of course. So this notion that says somebody must go to court and he be found innocent or guilty does not mean justice does not work like that. You have had people who have been found guilty when they are innocent. And you have had people who have been found innocent when they are guilty. So the judicial system is not an exact science. So that's the first thing that one must park. So when you are facing a situation like that, it becomes your job to make sure that you also undermine that, especially when you think that this is a violation of your rights. So his demeanor could be that he believes in himself, but it also could mean that it's somebody who knows now, I've got to fight and I'm no longer the president. So it is, whereas when you are the president, there's a demeanor in which you must conduct yourself. Otherwise, people will treat you as if you are just another thug. So right now, he is actually fighting because this case has been ongoing for a number of years. And he's also aware that his enemies have not given up. And they have even marshaled people who were there in the first place. Actually, one of the things that Nicholson had said is that when he threw the case, he was not saying Jacob Zuma was innocent, but he was saying the process was so tainted that he was hoping that the people who were involved in that tainted process would not be brought back again. And there you have the Billy Downer, the one who cried when the case was. So you don't have somebody who is going to pursue this on the basis of justice. You have somebody who has approached this as a personal vendetta as well.